Why do good men so often end up losing? You were taught that if you were kind, patient, attentive, if you showed up every time and made her feel like the center of your world, she would love you for it. That effort would be rewarded, that loyalty would be enough. But reality doesn't work that way. In fact, the men who give the most are often the ones left behind first. And here's the hard truth most people never say out loud. It's not because you weren't good enough. It's because you were taught rules that don't actually govern attraction. You grew up believing that being a gentleman was the answer, that apologizing quickly, being available constantly, and sacrificing your own needs made you more lovable. But while you were trying to prove your value, something else was happening quietly. She wasn't measuring your effort. She was measuring your strength. While you were sending long messages trying to fix things, another man said very little. He didn't chase. He didn't explain himself. He simply lived his life, and somehow he became the one she couldn't stop thinking about. Why? What does he understand that you don't? There's a hidden language beneath attraction. It isn't spoken through promises or emotional speeches. It's communicated through presence, through boundaries, through emotional self-control. And few people understood this better than Machiavelli. He didn't write about love. He wrote about power, about perception, about how human beings respond, not to intentions, but to strength. This isn't about becoming cold, it's about becoming grounded. Because respect is never given to the man who abandons himself just to be liked. It's given to the man who stays rooted even when it risks losing approval. Most men are taught to seek validation, to avoid conflict, to bend themselves to keep someone. But attraction doesn't grow from self-abandonment. It grows from emotional stability. From a man who doesn't collapse when ignored, from a man who doesn't beg for attention, from a man who understands his own worth without needing someone else to confirm it. Kindness matters. But kindness without strength invites disrespect. And once respect disappears, attraction quietly follows. Most men make one fatal mistake without even realizing it. They confuse kindness with weakness. They believe that being endlessly agreeable, always available, and never saying no makes them more attractive. But what they don't understand is that attraction doesn't grow from compliance. It grows from emotional strength. A woman isn't testing how nice you are, she's testing how solid you are. She watches the small things. How you carry yourself, how you react under pressure, whether you have boundaries, whether you can stand your ground without needing her approval. And when those things are missing, something changes inside her. Not anger, not hatred, something worse, pity. And pity quietly kills attraction. Machiavelli once warned that love without respect cannot survive. Not because people are cruel, but because respect is what gives love its structure. Without it, emotional imbalance begins to grow. Think about the man who is always available, always adjusting, always saying yes, even when it costs him his own priorities. He believes he's proving devotion, but what he's really communicating is dependence, and dependence weakens perception. Attraction doesn't grow from someone who needs you to feel complete. It grows from someone who chooses you while remaining complete on his own. Imagine this simple moment. She texts you late at night, knowing you have responsibilities early in the morning. The man driven by fear responds instantly, afraid to lose connection. The man driven by self-respect responds when it aligns with his life. Not to punish her, not to manipulate her, but because his life doesn't revolve around being chosen. This difference may seem small, but psychologically it changes everything. Because every action communicates value. The harder you try to impress her, the more invisible you become. The more you sacrifice your standards to keep her, the more she senses that you don't value yourself. And people rarely value what isn't valued by its owner. Machiavelli understood this clearly. The ruler who governs from fear of losing power eventually loses it. The ruler who governs from internal certainty keeps it. The same applies here. Being loved feels good. But if you have to abandon yourself to maintain that love, You're trading your identity for temporary approval, and attraction cannot survive that trade. Respect isn't begged for, it's inspired. It's inspired when you become a man who can love deeply, but never at the cost of his self-respect. A man who can walk away if necessary, not out of anger, but out of self-possession. Here's the part most men don't want to face. Attraction doesn't disappear suddenly. It fades the moment you show that you're willing to trade your dignity just to keep someone. Not because she planned it, but because her perception of you changed. The moment you show that you need her more than you need yourself, something inside her relaxes, but not in a good way. The tension disappears, the mystery disappears, the emotional gravity that once pulled her toward you begins to dissolve, because desire feeds on uncertainty, not insecurity uncertainty. Machiavelli understood this deeply. Power doesn't come from being loved at all costs. It comes from knowing you can stand alone if necessary. From knowing that your identity, your purpose, and your self-respect exist independently of anyone else's approval. This doesn't mean you become cold. It means you become centered. There's a difference. The man who creates lasting attraction isn't the one who gives everything without limits. He's the one whose attention has weight, whose time has structure, whose presence isn't guaranteed. Think about it like this. Scarcity creates value, not because something is unavailable, but because it isn't given away carelessly. When your life has direction, when your priorities exist beyond the relationship, your attention becomes meaningful. It becomes something she feels, not something she expects, and that changes how she sees you. Not as someone chasing her, but as someone she doesn't want to lose. This is what Machiavelli meant when he spoke about perception. People don't respond to what you say about yourself. They respond to what your behavior reveals. If you abandon your path to keep someone, you communicate weakness. If you remain grounded in your path and invite someone into it, you communicate strength. One repels, the other attracts. This is why the man who isn't afraid to walk away becomes unforgettable. Not because he plays games, but because he lives from self-respect. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't collapse when ignored. He doesn't chase validation. He chooses himself first. And paradoxically, that's what makes others choose him too. Because in the end, attraction isn't built on how much you give. It's built on how firmly you stand, not against her, but within yourself. In modern dating, a woman may forgive your mistakes, but she will never forget the moment she realizes you are no longer guaranteed. That moment changes everything. It introduces risk, and risk creates attention. It creates tension. It keeps the emotional spark alive. Most men believe desire grows from flowers, sweet words, and constant reassurance. But desire doesn't grow from comfort alone. Desire grows from uncertainty. You want her to think about you when you're not there, to miss you, to wonder if she might lose you. And that will never happen if you are always available, always predictable, always waiting. It happens when your life has its own gravity, when your mission comes first. Not because you don't care about her, but because you care about your direction. The next time she calls and you're busy, don't drop everything. Stay focused. Not to punish her, but to show that your life has structure, that your time has weight. The next time she cancels plans at the last minute, don't react emotionally. Don't chase explanations. Continue with your plans. Let your world keep moving. Not because you're cold, because you're grounded. One of the strongest forms of silent power is calm indifference. Not forced, not performed, but real. Saying, it's all good, and continuing to build your life without needing validation. No drama, no emotional speeches, just action. That's what creates presence. That's what creates power. That's what creates power. And that's what keeps attraction alive. Machiavelli understood something most men overlook. The person who controls perception controls reality. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be emotionally solid. You don't need to be invulnerable. You need to be self-contained. Because nothing weakens attraction faster than over-explaining yourself. The man who constantly explains, apologizes, and justifies himself unknowingly communicates something deeper. He communicates dependence. He communicates uncertainty. He communicates that he needs approval to feel secure, and that quietly erodes respect. Most men think transparency creates attraction. But attraction isn't built on exposing everything. It's built on depth. Depth doesn't reveal itself all at once. It invites discovery. A woman wants to feel like there's more to you than what's visible. She wants to sense layers she hasn't fully reached yet. Because mystery keeps the emotional mind engaged. When she feels like she already knows everything about you, curiosity fades. But when she senses there's more beneath the surface, her attention stays. Imagine this simple moment. She asks why you didn't reply last night. The man driven by insecurity rushes to explain himself. He apologizes. He fills the silence with reasons. The man driven by certainty gives a simple answer. I was busy. No tension, no defensiveness, no emotional leakage. He doesn't overexpose himself. He remains calm. And calmness creates gravity. This isn't about manipulation. It's about self-possession. It's about protecting your emotional center instead of handing it over. Because attraction doesn't grow from emotional availability alone. It grows from emotional strength and presence, from a man who belongs to himself first. And that quiet certainty speaks louder than any explanation ever could. A predictable man is easy to understand. And a man who is easy to understand is easy to control. You cannot afford to be that man. You must become the variable she cannot fully predict, the presence she cannot fully decode. Because the moment someone feels they figured you out completely, their curiosity fades. And curiosity is the engine of attraction. This is where silence becomes powerful. Not forced silence, not cold silence. Strategic silence. Not everything deserves a reaction. Not everything requires explanation. Sometimes, saying nothing communicates more than anything you could say. Think about when you were younger and your father looked at you without saying a word. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to explain himself. His presence alone carried weight. That's the kind of energy that creates respect. It's calm, contained, certain. Women, even if they never say it out loud, are deeply drawn to that kind of emotional stability. A man who doesn't beg for attention, who doesn't panic when ignored, who doesn't rush to fill every silence with nervous words. He observes, he listens, and when he speaks, his words carry intention. Silence, when used correctly, isn't weakness, it's control. It shows that you don't need constant validation to feel secure. It shows that your emotional state isn't dependent on someone else's reactions. And mystery isn't distance, it's depth. Now look at how most men present themselves today, especially online. Every thought, every feeling, every moment is shared instantly. Every emotion is exposed. Nothing is held back. And without realizing it, they remove the very thing that keeps attraction alive: discovery. If someone already knows everything about you, there's nothing left to explore. Your life should feel grounded and purposeful, not hidden, but not fully exposed either. She should sense that there's more beneath the surface, more direction, more focus, more depth. She should wonder what drives you, what you're building, where your mind goes when you're quiet. That curiosity keeps her emotionally engaged. This isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about emotional discipline, about knowing that not every thought needs to be shared immediately, because timing matters. Many men sabotage themselves by revealing everything too quickly. Their fears, their insecurities, their emotional dependence. Not because honesty is wrong, but because emotional exposure without stability creates imbalance. Strength isn't about hiding who you are. It's about revealing yourself with intention. Layer by layer, the man who holds emotional composure naturally creates intrigue. Not because he's playing games, but because he belongs to himself first. And people are drawn to that. When she doesn't fully understand you, she thinks about you more. When she senses emotional depth she hasn't reached yet, her attention stays. Not out of confusion, out of attraction. Machiavelli understood this principle clearly. People don't respond to who you believe you are. They respond to who you appear to be through your actions, your presence, and your emotional stability. You don't need to control her. You need to control yourself. Because perception shapes experience. A man can be intelligent, capable, and disciplined, but if he presents himself as emotionally needy, he will be perceived as weak. Another man can be imperfect, but if he carries himself with emotional certainty, he will be perceived as strong. This is why attraction isn't built through effort alone. It's built through emotional impact. You don't win when you capture her attention for a moment. You win when your presence stays in her mind long after you're gone. Because in the end, people don't remember what you explained. They remember how you made them feel. A woman doesn't fall in love with what you do for her. She falls in love with how she feels when she's around you. And if your presence makes her feel like you're completely surrendered, like your emotional stability depends on her, it doesn't matter how successful you are, how loyal you are, or how much you give. She won't see strength, she'll see dependence. And dependence quietly weakens attraction. Listen carefully, because this is where most men go wrong. The first mistake of a weak man is presenting himself as the solution to her life. He wants to rescue her, fix her problems, be her emotional safety net. He believes that if he becomes indispensable, he becomes irreplaceable. It sounds noble, but it's perceived differently. It feels like neediness in disguise. The strong man doesn't present himself as a solution. He presents himself as an opportunity. He doesn't try to repair her world. He shows that his world is already stable, already moving, already grounded, and she is welcome to be part of it. But she is not the center of it. That shift alone changes everything. Imagine she asks you, "What are you looking for in a relationship?" Most men respond with emotional hunger. They say they want someone who loves them, supports them, validates them. But the man who understands his value answers differently. He says calmly, "I'm looking for someone who adds to my life, not completes it. My piece is already mine. Feel the difference. One man is asking to be chosen, the other man is choosing." And that frame shapes how she sees you. Because attraction doesn't grow toward a man searching for emotional rescue. It grows toward a man who is already emotionally complete. Machiavelli understood this principle clearly. Power belongs to the one who doesn't depend on approval to remain steady. In relationships, this means you can be warm, but never weak. You can be open, but never without boundaries. You can care deeply, but never abandon yourself. She should feel that you desire her, but she should also feel that your life continues forward with or without her. Because what can be lost becomes valuable. What is difficult to obtain becomes respected. The second mistake most men make is trying to explain their value. They talk about their past, their pain, their achievements. They try to convince her of their worth through words. But value is never explained. It is felt. A man with true presence doesn't announce his strength. He lives it, in how he speaks, in how he moves, in what he tolerates and what he doesn't. For example, imagine she tests your boundaries. She seeks attention elsewhere, watching how you react. The insecure man becomes emotional. The passive man says nothing but feels small inside. The grounded man remains calm. He doesn't argue. He doesn't compete. He simply removes his attention and continues living his life. Not to punish her, but because he respects himself. And that creates impact. Because emotional control is rare, most people react impulsively. Very few remain centered, and the man who remains centered becomes unforgettable. This isn't about manipulation, it's about self-possession. When she expects you to chase and you remain calm, she notices. When she expects emotional reactions and you remain grounded, she feels it. Not because you're pretending, but because you belong to yourself first. Machiavelli said that those who wish to command must first learn to control themselves. Not loudly, quietly, through presence, through emotional discipline, through knowing that your value isn't determined by someone else's decision to stay. The moment you stop trying to convince someone of your worth, your presence changes. You stop chasing. You stop explaining. You stop negotiating your self-respect. And paradoxically, that's when people begin to value you the most. Because real power isn't forcing someone to stay. It's knowing you can walk away, with dignity if they don't. Strategic withdrawal is an art. Most men leave out of emotion, anger, frustration, pain. But the man who understands himself leaves with clarity, not to create drama, not to prove a point, simply because he knows his value no longer belongs where it isn't respected. Machiavelli understood this well. Wise men don't act when emotion overwhelms them. They act when reason makes the decision clear. Leaving at the right moment creates something no apology, no argument, no grand gesture ever could. Dignity. The kind of dignity that lingers long after you're gone. Because there was no begging, no shouting, no emotional collapse. Only silence, and silence is powerful, especially to someone who believed you would never leave. Imagine this. You're with a woman who slowly begins to change. She stops valuing your time. Her warmth fades. Her attention becomes inconsistent. The weak man reacts immediately. He complains. He demands answers. He tries to force clarity. The average man waits. He hopes things will improve. He stays longer than he should, slowly losing himself. But the man who respects himself does something different. He withdraws quietly. He doesn't announce it. He doesn't threaten it. He simply redirects his energy back into his own life. And suddenly, the absence speaks louder than anything he could have said. Because when someone expects your constant presence, your absence creates questions. Not anger, questions. What happened? Why did he stop reaching out? Did I lose him? Mystery replaces certainty. And certainty was the thing she took for granted. This isn't about punishing anyone. It's about protecting yourself. True attraction has never been about how much you tolerate. A man who can release someone with calm strength becomes unforgettable. Not because he played games, but because he refused to abandon himself. Here's the hardest truth most people avoid. The man who loves himself enough to walk away is the only man capable of loving deeply without losing his identity, because love without self-respect becomes dependency. And dependency quietly destroys attraction. If you have to beg someone to stay, you're no longer choosing each other, you're negotiating your dignity. Real connection doesn't require that. Real connection is mutual, it is chosen freely. Detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's the moment you realize that staying where you are no longer valued costs more than leaving. Yes, it hurts, but that pain is temporary. The loss of self-respect lasts much longer. One day she may remember the moment you didn't argue, you didn't beg, you didn't collapse. You simply walked away. Not with anger, with certainty. And that quiet strength becomes part of how she remembers you. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to be someone who refuses to stay where you are no longer respected. Because in the end, real power isn't controlling anyone else, it's controlling yourself. It's knowing that you can love deeply, but never at the cost of who you are. That is the man people respect. That is the man people remember. And that is the man who never needs to beg for love.